show you how to do that too, because it's a little tricky. We're on chapter 22 of Deuteronomy. This one's 22 and 23. We're still going through the laws, and this is some of them are extra laws that we didn't hear early on in Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy. In Leviticus, and some of them are just additional kind of little explanation. Because if you ever remember, these people, most of them wasn't there when the first time they went through this. This is the second generation. First generation, everybody died off except Joshua and Caleb and Moses. So everybody died off. So now he's going through this again. And tonight's, it's a hit and miss. Boy, it's like a dartboard and it's all over the place on what laws were written. Verse 1 says, "You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray, and hide yourself from them. You shall certainly bring them back to your brother. And if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, then you shall bring it to your own house, and it shall remain with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall restore it to him. You shall do the same with his donkey, and so shall you do with his garment, with any lost thing of your brother's which he has lost and you have found. You shall do likewise. You must not hide yourself. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down along the road and hide yourself from them. You shall surely help him, lift them up again." Now this is not your brother's ox. This is your spiritual brother's ox. The little granddaughter when we come home from church, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and said, "What? Is he your brother? I didn't know you had a brother." And I'm like, "No, honey, he's not my brother, my physical brother." So some people don't know that you know, it's your neighbors, the friends around you. They're talking about when you go occupy the land, you're going to have people that you haven't been around. Now, a lot of the families are going to stay together, okay? It's just like families are. They'll find a place, build it, it'll be a little while off, but they'll be there. So, families, yeah, you'd normally do that. Your brother or sister left something at your house, you'd keep it to them until they came back, or take care of it, or whatever. This is saying, even if you're friends, and it goes on, Jesus goes even further and says, even your enemies, love your enemies. You know, do all these different things that you wouldn't think about doing for otherbody. But this is what God is telling them, to set them apart. It's not like, "Oh, I found something over here, it's mine. Finders keepers," you know. That's not what God's trying to tell them here. He's trying to tell them that you need to take care of even the animals that you have. Okay? And like I said, there's a lot of commentary in here, and we're not going to go over all the commentary, but you can sure read it. It's good. The next one, Brother Jefferson, the next page. 5, I guess it is.
Which one now?
Then just the next page there. It says 22 through 5. I read 1 through 4. A woman shall not wear anything.
It says, "A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God."
Okay. Why do you think that's in there?
Pertains to a man.
Yeah. What do you think why do you think God put that in order?
To set them apart.
That's right, to set them apart. Well, who cares? They're just wearing them togas over there anyway, aren't they? Well,
to look like women and men.
that's right. Even though they basically wore an outer garment, like a robe, the men, they were shorter, so they could run, do the chores, and do everything, and the women's were a little longer. And then they also had undergarments, okay, that they wore too. And it's setting them apart from what the pagans did. And one of the big things, it doesn't go in here and explain it, but one of the big things in here is the pagans, and I'm talking about the Canaanites and all the ites that's in this area that they're getting ready to go to. This is part of their religious worship. Men would dress up with women, and women would dress up like men, and and they would take part in all kinds of hideous, as their church, as their religion. So that's what he's trying to set them apart from that. It's not saying that they can't dress comfortably, they can't dress, he's not putting an issue on them about that. He's saying, I don't want you to be like them at all. Okay, don't be any way like them. That's what it's talking about. It says long robes and wrapping garments were common for both sexes, yet the specific types of garments and the way in which they were worn made a clear distinction between the sexes, and this command instructs God's people to respect those distinctions. Today says a man can wear a kilt. Scottish guys, they wear kilts, or Irish,
That's just
or
wrong.
Scottish. I know, it's weird, but hey, that's them, that's their culture. But here again, it's not a dress, okay? Well,
No, I get it.
yeah. But it's one of those things that here again, it's the way that they were raised in that area. Today we see the total opposite of that. They're doing it just because, seems like. Says this gender bender behavior. I kind of like that
Yeah,
connotation there.
that's true.
I mean, it's what it is. That's what they're trampling on those rights. Later writers after Moses, Lucian of Samosata, I don't know who that is, but I've heard of Eusebius. They speak of practice of masquerading in the worship of the Astarte. Apparently women appeared in men's garments and men in women's garments. So that's what they say. So that's what he's trying to get away from. Alright? 6 and 7, Iris, top of page 3.
If a bird's nest happens to be before you along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall surely let the mother go and take the young for yourself, that it may be well with you and that you may prolong your days.
Okay. Here again, you gotta set in this context. They're going into this land, even though they're gonna get a lot of, take over a lot of property from these people that they're going over, it may be you have some lean years. So they're saying if you come across some animals, not just birds, but animals, okay, and you're hungry and you need to eat, go ahead and take the young ones. Don't eat the older one, the mother, because she can have more. I mean, it sounds rough, but it's just like, if you think of it just like our chickens and hens, we eat the eggs. You know, yeah, it ruffles the feathers when you get under there and get their eggs, but they're gonna lay some more. They lay almost every day, most chickens do. But, so, they'll go on. So it's providing for them, and it's helping keep that, because as they're going into this new area, they don't wanna just, kinda like when we talked about tearing the trees down while they're capturing these cities, it's gonna be where you live, so you want animals there, you want to be able to go out and hunt, be able to, get other meat that you can't find, because, they didn't have grocery stores back then like we did. They did have markets, and people would go and get stuff, they'd raise the sheep and the cattle and the goats and sell them in the markets, but, a lot of times we read about that they went out and they shot their own, the deer and all the different animals that they had out there, made their own. Esau made the venison for, his father and all that. Matthew Poole said, partly for the bird's sake, which suffered enough by the loss of its young, for God would not have cruelty exercised towards the brute creatures, and partly for men's sake, to restrain their greediness and their covetousness, that they should not monopolize all to themselves, but leave the hope of a future seed for others. So that's what we're trying to get across in this particular one. Deuteronomy 8 on page 4.
When you build a new house, then you shall make a parapet.
Mm-hmm.
A parapet?
Yep.
What is that?
A railing.
What's that?
Well, go ahead and read
For
it.
your
I'll tell you.
roof.
Yeah.
That you may not bring guilt of bloodshed on your household if anyone falls from it.
Okay. What their houses consisted of, for the most part, was rock houses, stone, clay, whatever, mud houses, with the walls. Then they'd put a roof on it, they'd put logs across it, put a roof on it, make it where they could sleep up there or get up there, because it's cooler in the day. They don't want people falling off your roof. Okay, so put up a railing, and it goes about, it says in there 3.5 foot, about midway. So you bump into it, you're not going to fall off. As we watched the Chosen, the meeting that they had, I don't know if it happened this way, but the meeting that in the Chosen they had with Nicodemus, Jesus met with Nicodemus, it was up on a roof. And they were sitting at a table and the wall was like right here. I mean, it was about that level. And then in another case, when they were watching the letting down of the man through the roof, they took the man up on the roof and let him down through the roof. The kids and Matthew was over on the other wall, roof of the house of the other wall, and it was a wall, you could see, part of the roof, and it had that railing too, watching what was going on in that house. So we see that these guys, in my opinion, the Chosen did pretty good background on all these, how they were doing the houses. And you don't want to have a house with just, even today, if you have a house that somewhere on an upper floor or a balcony or something walks out, you've got a railing because you don't want people to fall off of it. If it goes out anywhere, usually out a door or anything, there's usually some protection there because you just don't want to walk out and fall off the deck or fall off the stairs.
I guess in my mind, I think we have pitched on.
Right. Theirs was mainly flat.
They were.
They have very little rain. Okay? They don't get a lot of rain. So they don't have to worry about the rain on and off. And most of the time, the rain they get just impacts the roof because they put, like I said, logs across it and then branches across that and straw and stuff like that and then put mud on it to seal it off. So if it rains, muds get a little wet. Yeah, you might get a little wet in there, but it ain't gonna rain like that much. Now here recently, I don't know if you noticed that much, they have had a lot of rains in Israel. They even had big snow in the northern part. So it's just a railing that they put around that because they don't want anybody to, die, to shed blood on that. Charles Spurgeon, in a sermon that he titled Battlements, shows how just as there was to be a railing for the protection of people on the roofs of Israel's homes, there are also spiritual railings for our protection. Many people, in regard to sin, get too close to the edge and fall off, then it's too late. So we need to have railings protecting us from the edge. Such railings will not only protect us, but others also. So that's one of the things that they have put in there. And here's some laws of separation, 9 to 12. You shall not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear a garment of different sorts, such as woolen and linen, mixed together. You shall make tassels on the four corners of the clothing with which you cover yourselves. Okay? All these kind of sound weird to us. We don't know what's going on. The vineyard is the different types of seed. That comes about from if the plant is close enough to that seed, in my opinion. Okay, they say some other things in here, which is okay. But it could make it a different type of plant. And typically you don't want that unless later on, they became, I'm sure they probably had some back then too, where they got it to where it was bigger fruit, you know, and all this, they got the seeds together and made that, but, so that's what they wanted to do. And so you had this field, and this field was just this, whatever was there. And then over here, you have this one. Now today, we have what they call companion planting, where they plant something, corn, say for one thing, and a lot of the Indians, they say plant the sister corns together, which is the corn and the pumpkin or squash, and I think it's beans. If you plant them together, they work together. The beans will crawl up the corn stalk, and you can pick them, and then the pumpkins cover the ground to keep, you know, the stuff from washing away from the corn. And so they have that. That's not really what he's trying to get at. He's trying to get, you get two different types of grain, and that grain might intermix, and it may produce a sterile crop, and then you'd be out of, you know, wouldn't have anything at all for that.
I'm a gardener, so when Ron and I first married,
Mhm.
he helped me plant, and we planted cantaloupe, and he planted the watermelon too.
Yeah,
It looked just like a watermelon.
yeah, tasted like a
It was a
cantaloupe.
waterloaf.
Waterloaf.
It was awful.
Yeah, yeah.
It was awful.
I planted one squash, is, both of them are squash actually. Zucchini, which is green, and the yellow squash over here. And the ones on the outside did real good, but the ones on the inside, I got some huge squash. There was zucchini that was green and yellow, and so we gave those away. See anybody wants them? No. So you just, it's like that. It's close enough to where you don't really know what you'll get. So you have to kind of be careful. You should not plow an ox with a donkey. A couple of different things here. They're different sizes. Okay? Donkey's not as big as an ox. Donkey's not as strong as an ox. The ox is going to be doing all the burden. Donkeys will eat anything, pretty much. And they said one of the things that they do eat is sometimes they fed them on coarse, poisonous weeds. The donkey can eat them. It won't hurt them that much. But it's terrible breath. It stinks. And the ox won't like it. It says here. I don't know about that. I've never come through there. But it said it could make the ox sick and it could die. So, I mean, you know, you gotta be careful with that. Something I didn't know. On the clothing, to distinguish the Israelites from the pagans, they had them to put their tassels on the four corners of their clothing. Now, here again, you gotta remember, they typically had the undergarments, and then they had an outer garment that was basically a big sheet with a hole in it. Yeah, poncho type, and they just slid it over, put a belt, wrapped it up, and on those, or even underneath that, sometimes it's underneath it because they had a robe on top of it, that's what they'd put those tassels on. And the tassels would separate them. When they saw them, people would know, you're a Jew. You're an Israelite. Okay, that separates them out. You see them today. Some of the people will wear those. They're not as long, but they'll be on their shirts, underneath their shirts. It'll have tassels running down their pants. You can see them underneath it.
So that's what they had on the chosen. I never understood.
They had the tassels. That's, whether it was or it wasn't, that's what the lady with the bleeding problem supposedly grasped.
Right.
Because then she could touch his clothing and not make him unclean. But she grabbed the right person because he was clean and he made her clean. Okay, I'll read the next one, it's long. 13 to 21. If any man takes a wife and goes into her and detests her and charges her with shameful conduct and brings a bad name on her and says, I took this woman, and when I came to her I found she was not a virgin, then the father and mother of the young woman shall take and bring out the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate. And the young woman's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as wife, and he detests her now. Now he has charged her with shameful conduct, saying, I found your daughter was not a virgin, And yet these are the evidences of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. Then the elders of the city shall take that man and punish him, and they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought a bad name on a virgin of Israel. And she shall be his wife. He cannot divorce her all his days. But if the thing is true, and evidence of virginity are not found for the young woman, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house, and the men of the city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to play the harlot in her father's house. So you shall put your evil away, the evil away from among you.
I'll keep you straight.
Yeah, that was part of it. And they say in here that they don't really know of any that actually happened, that they actually stoned them. It's kind of like some of the other things, that very few evidence that people were stoned back then. One of them that we do know was Stephen was stoned. But not, even though it was something that, it's just a threat here again, that caused people not, to understand and be aware of what the problems are, and not be caught in that situation, or not participate in that situation. And if you want to find out, I'll let you read about that, because that's more personal. But it's interesting. It is interesting. Do you want to read 22 for us, Brother Epson?
If a man shall lie with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die. The man that lay with the woman, and the woman, as you shall put away from the evil from Israel.
Okay, so this is a penalty of adultery. This goes back, this penalty goes back and reminds us of when they brought the woman in adultery out to Jesus. Well, where was the man? Both of them shall die. That's what Moses told them here. Man wasn't there. And supposedly, in order to enforce this, you have to have 2 witnesses. Okay, so again, that's pretty rare that you're going to have 2 witnesses of an adultery. But anyway, they were not, it's a penalty that wasn't enforced that much, but the penalty was there in case they needed to use it. Hello, somebody's coming in. Maybe Bertha. So both of them shall die. And it goes into Texas. Oh, that's my father-in-law. You can just put them back here if you want, Bill. Thank you. Both of them shall die. It says, as a practical matter, this death penalty was rarely carried out, as is the case in most of the situations where capital punishment was commanded. Okay, let's go to 23, down at the bottom of page 9. Iris?
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
If a young woman who is a virgin be betrothed to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. The young woman, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man, because he humbled his neighbor's wife, so you shall put away the evil from among you. But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death. For just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed young woman cried out, but there was no one to save her. if a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all his days.
Okay? So it goes back to what happened to the woman. If they're in the city, the woman needs to cry out. Okay? And even though she may cry out, you would think somebody in the city would come to help her. And that would prevent what was happening. But if she's out in the country, okay, nobody's there to help her, so the man's going to be taken away. He'll be killed.
These are tough rules.
Yes, they are. And even if even if she wasn't, and this is betrothed, okay? The betrothal is they're not married yet, but in our,
Engaged?
well, it's even more than engaged. It's like they're married.
Okay.
It's it's not vows have been exchanged, but fathers are the ones that negotiate this happening. And monies have already been changed hands, and what happens is the bridegroom, he goes back home to prepare the room for his bride. Okay? So they go back, and then they go, when it's finished, and it's either built onto the father's house, or he built another house, and it takes some time. But when he's ready, then the father tells him, okay, you go get your bride now. And he goes and gets the bride. They come and they have the wedding service. And then but she is still his betrothed, which is, we would say, his wife, just about, even though they weren't, quote, married. They were singled out together. More than engaged, but, it's kind of like common law, I guess, would be here, maybe, would be closer, I don't know. But they were for each other. There wasn't for anybody else. And that's why we see when Joseph found out about Mary, she can be killed because he was betrothed to her. And he chose to, okay, I'll just divorce her quietly. And that's when the angel stepped in and said, nope, you're not doing that. She's saying what she's saying is right. You may not believe it, but she's saying it right. Okay, the last scripture in this was, I think it is, 30. Yeah. A man shall not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's bed. And here it's, what they believe it's saying is, in case of a son marrying his stepmother after the father has died. Okay? This is considered incest, even though there was no blood relation, because he was said to have uncovered his father's bed. He was, sleeping with his father's wife, his father's, And if you say this, this particular phrasing is exactly what it says in 1 Corinthians 5:2, what was happening in the Corinthian church when Paul was addressing it. So even though it was in the law a long time ago, they were still having to deal with it. Okay, on to the next one. Chapter 23. This is talking about who can be in the assembly. And most of the time, most of these rules, what they're saying is two different views. One is they can't be in at all. Okay, that's pretty extreme. Or they can't hold a position like a judge or a ruler, or ruler of tens, ruler of hundreds, or whatever, in the assembly, the congregation of Israel here. It says, he who is emasculated by crushing or mutilation shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. That sounds pretty tough. If you happen to have a problem, got hurt, you'd be up creek. Here again, it goes back to the pagan rituals. That's what the pagans did in that time. They would mutilate themselves for their God. And that's crazy, but that's what they did. So he wants to show no particular, favoritism. Don't have that at all. Don't be a part of that. And this second part of it, B, says, when we read this term, it usually refers to the nation gathered before the Lord in worship, such as when they were gathered in Mount Sinai. But it doesn't have Deuteronomy, other chapters, says it doesn't always have this sense. And you can go down through and read a whole bunch of them down there, but one thing especially right at the bottom, Isaiah 56, 3 and 5, shows that even eunuchs and foreigners could be accepted before the Lord if they would obey him. They would be accepted before the normal people who disobeyed God.
Wow.
Now you've got to go back and look at, though, who God used. When the Babylonians captured the people, they took all the people back. The ones that was in the top echelon that the king wanted with him, he made them eunuchs. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Those guys didn't have a choice. There wasn't an assembly at that time, okay, so but they still did. They still honored God. They still did what they had to do.
They were eunuchs.
They were. If you go back and read the story of Daniel. Again, it says eunuchs were excluded because God's covenant with Israel was vitally connected with the idea of the seed. And emasculation is a crime against the seed of man. Additionally, most eunuchs were made to be so in pagan ceremonies where they were dedicated to pagan gods. Okay, Brother Epson, verse 2.
One of illegitimate birth shall not enter the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of his descendants shall enter the assembly of the Lord. Okay. And it says here it's difficult to understand what they mean by illegitimate birth. We know what it means to us, but it says some later Jewish writers defined this as someone who was born of an incestuous relationship between Jews. Others said it refers to those born of mixed marriages between the people of Israel and their pagan neighbors. In the story of the house of David, we see that they're emphasizing this as David was an illegitimate son of Jesse, because he married a foreigner, is the way they said. Now that's, in my opinion, that's not in the Bible. Well, it's not my opinion. It's not in the Bible. It's in some Jewish texts that they had that. So they say, but who did God choose? To the 10th generation, okay? And some of them think it was David himself, some of them think it was his uncle or great-great-grandfather, Boaz, because he married Ruth, which was a Moabite. Okay? And that's not the 10th generation, that's just three generations down. So, it's one of the things that we're not real clear on what this was meant. Again, we know what it was for, is to keep them away from their foreign people, to try to keep their people away from all the others and mixing with them. They'd already had sons. Those that were on the east side of the Jordan River, they were going to be very close. Even though they wiped out those people, there were still other people there, and they were going to be very close. We see this, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, that they were already tempted
through Balak, when he was there trying to, from Balaam, trying to get, run the Israelites out. They didn't want them there. Iris, you want to read 3 through 6?
And Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of his descendants shall enter the assembly of the Lord forever, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the road when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam the son of Beor from Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse you.
Yep.
Nevertheless, the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam, but the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you. You shall not seek their peace nor their prosperity all your days forever.
Okay. Just a reminder, who was the Ammonites and the Moabites?
What?
Who were the Ammonites and the Moabites? Why would they expect them to sell them bread and water as they traveled? Let's go back to Abraham. Abraham had a nephew named Lot. After he got run out of Sodom, the angels ran him and his daughters and wife out of Sodom. Remember that story? His wife turned to a pillar of salt. Then his daughters, 2 daughters, both got him drunk 2 different nights, slept with him because they didn't have anybody else there. They wanted to keep their lineage. And guess what the names of her children were? Ammon and Moab. Ammon, A-M-M-O-N, Ammonite.
Oh.
Ammon and Moab.
Wow.
Ammonites and Moabites. So that's why they went to them. First of all, they were near kinsmen, if you want to say it that way. Maybe the 4th cousin on my mother's right side, I don't know. But, they were somehow related, and you would have thought they would have been okay with them, but they wasn't. And they didn't give them anything, and God said, for that, no Ammonite or Moabite shall enter into even to the 10th generation. Anytime they go something like that, basically they're saying forever. Somebody's shooting up along the river there. The Ammonites and the Moabites, even to the 10th generation. That's like saying don't allow them in. Okay? But we see, years and years later, Ruth comes along, she's a Moabite. Boaz marries her. As Samuel said in the house of David, God is funny. He puts out rules and then somehow those rules, he still picks what he wants. Okay, then we go to 7 and 8, Tammy, on page 14.
Yeah. Is that Arbor or Arbor?
Abhor.
Abhor.
Yeah.
An Edomite?
Edomite. Mm-hmm.
Yep, Edomite. For he is your brother. You shall not abhor an Egyptian, because you were an alien in his land. The children of the 3rd generation born to them may enter the assembly of the Lord.
Okay. So again, these go back, the Edomite goes back to who was Edom? Another name for Edom, you remember? Esau. Jacob and Esau, Isaac, his brother, Jacob. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Yeah, one was nice, clean cut, red haired, and the other was hairy and woolly and a man of the field. So he was an Edomite. He was Edom. He was called Edom, after the people after him. It says because Israel's brother was the father of the Edomites. So this is just to the third generation, where before it's 10. So now they're and the people in Egypt. Okay, you can people of the 10th generation, third generation of Egypt, because you were there with them for 400 years, and for many of those 400 years, they got together just fine. It was just in those later years, I don't know how, half of it or whatever, whenever they forgot Joseph, that's, when that lineage passed on. So, that's the two. Now, one of the Edomites, the most famous Edomite, was Herod the Great. Okay? He was one of the rulers at the time that Jesus was born. He was the one that built so many beautiful edifices over there. He had the temple rebuilt. Okay? During his time, it prospered greatly. And then all of his, quote, Herod sons after him took on that. But that's one of the things that he is known for, that he was an Edomite. 9 through 14, excuse me. When the army goes out against your enemies, then keep yourself from every wicked thing. If there is any man among you who becomes unclean by some occurrence in the night, then he shall go outside the camp. He shall not come inside the camp, but it shall be when evening comes that he shall wash with water, and when the sun sets he may come into the camp. Also you shall have a place outside the camp where you may go out, and you shall have an implement along with your equipment. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and turn and cover your refuse. For the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore your camp shall be holy, that he may see no unclean thing among you and turn away from you. So this is saying when they're out moving as an army, you still these rules still apply. There's still rules to apply. And you can't be, heathens or crude or anything like that. You've got to, if you go out to do your business, you got to go out and dig a hole and cover it up. Okay? That's just one of the things that you do. So they have to keep themselves ceremonially clean. Now, one of the things I read, this is interesting. I don't see how in the world anybody could do it, but it says some ancient rabbis taught that the holy city of Jerusalem should be considered the camp of the Lord. Under this reasoning, one had to go outside the camp to relieve oneself outside the city. However, for many people, the trip outside the large camp of Israel, which was the city, was longer than would be permitted on the Sabbath day. It was more than the distance that they could. Therefore, as a practical matter, the rabbis prohibited a Jew from relieving themselves on the Sabbath.
Oh.
How in the world?
What?
I don't know. You cannot do that. Bunch of sick people you're gonna have. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know where that guy comes from.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. Okay, Brother Everson, 15 and 16. You're still on that last one.
Well, I guess you'd have to wear a diaper and just change it the
I
next day.
guess it's like you have to wear it all day, and then the next day you take it out and throw it away.
They didn't have pull-ups for adults back then.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it is.
You shall not give back to his master the slave who has escaped from his master to you. He may dwell with you in your midst in the place which he chooses within one of your gates, where it seems best to him. You shall not oppress him.
Okay. Even back then, we see this. Paul wrote about this. He wrote a letter specifically about this Philemon to one of the slaves, Onesimus. He was sending Onesimus back to Philemon, and he told him, cherish him as a brother, as I cherish him. treat the slaves like you want to be treated. Yes, they're property, under their rules, they were property, but you gotta give the, you know, and this is talking about someone from outside, okay? If it's outside the camp, they had a slave, and they come out there, he's escaped them. If they're not gonna come looking for him, okay, but this is something different. He can dwell with you in the camp, okay, if they've escaped from their master wherever, in Egypt or wherever they were at. But he's to treat him, he shall not impress him, he shall not, you know, try to sell him back or anything like that. 17 and 18, Iris?
There shall be no ritual harlot of the daughters of Israel, or a perverted one of the sons of Israel. You shall not bring the wages of a harlot or the price of a dog to the house of the Lord your God for any vowed offering, for both of these are an abomination to the Lord your God.
Okay. So if they were a harlot, prostitute, you don't have to worry about tithing. They don't want your tithes. They don't want your monies. And the perverted sons of Israel, those are men, okay, harlots. And actually, they call them the dogs there. That's what they're referring to, the men. They don't want the wages of a harlot or one of those dogs. We don't want them in there. Now, I do got to tell you one of these jokes here, though. It's not kind of like this, but not. Two guys get shipwrecked on an island, and this one guy's just like, oh, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. The other guy goes, nope, I make $100,000 a week, I'm not going to die. The guy goes, why in the world? You can't use that money here. He goes, no, I make $100,000 a week. He said, you know, he goes, I don't understand, what do you mean? He said, I pay my tithes on $100,000 a week on my gross. My pastor will be here before Sunday. He's going to look after them since he brought up the tithes. Anyway, so it's just one of those things. Again, this is what they did to the pagans, okay? The pagans had these harlots, and they had both men and women, and they would bring all their money into the tabernacle, to their, not tabernacle, but their place of worship. To them, that was all, they was making their offerings. God said, don't even mess with that. Don't even think about doing that. That's what he's saying. Moses is telling them. That's an abomination. Both of these are abomination to the world. Okay, 19 and 20, Tim?
You shall not charge interest to your brother, interest on money or food or anything that is lent out at interest. To a foreigner, you may charge interest, but to your brother you shall not charge interest. That the Lord your God may bless you in all to which you set your hand in the land which you are entering to possess.
Okay, we talked about this back in Exodus. It talked to this. And this is predominantly, they think, the commentators that I read about it think that this is, if somebody doesn't have money to buy food with, or to buy something, that day they need to go out and buy them something, they don't have any, give them the money to do that. Don't charge them any interest. They'll pay you back later if they can. If they can't, that's okay. Because people also, they did do buildings, they did do things that they needed money, and they need to buy things, and there is, if you go through there and look at that, there is reason that they can charge interest to loans. It's not, you can't charge over interest, it's called usury, which is extortion, it's high dollars. And then again, it says to a foreigner, if there's somebody, a foreigner, you can charge them interest, because they have merchants coming in and out of they will have merchants coming in and out of their cities, and they can charge them interest to those people. but they wanted to prohibit the loans on these poor people for their basic needs, what they had, is what they were doing. 21 and 23, through 23. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay to pay it, for the Lord your God will surely requite it of you, and it would be sin to you. But if you abstain from vowing, it shall not be sin to you. That which is gone from your lips you shall keep and perform, for you voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you have promised with your mouth. This is something we need to be very careful of. That's what Jesus basically said when he was talking to the disciples. Said, let your yea, yea, and your nay be nay. Don't vow vows. Okay? If you do, you better be meaning what's going to happen, and you better follow through with it. Okay? Matthew 5 down there says, but I say unto you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, nor by, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it's his footstool. So, it's saying that we have to be careful with what we're promising God.
I remember the first time I was pastoring Owasso, and I working for somebody, Randy Schneider. We got a bunch of stuff stole off one of our jobs. We had to go to court, and I had this, been around the church of God just a few years. So I go before the court, and then I get up there, do you swear to tell the truth, and nothing but the truth? And I said, I affirm. They look at me just a little bit, and the judge said, just go. But
that's good. That's good enough.
Yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things that's, today they don't think nothing of it. Kids say it as a byword most of the time. But it's something that God wants us to be very careful of what our meaning is. Because it's a vow, it's almost a contract that is made. And if it's not carried out,
It's like I married you, so.
that's right. That's right.
And if you're a liar, you can, you know what I mean? When you read some of this stuff, you think, you gotta be kidding me, okay? But this stuff was going on at that time.
That's right.
I mean, we don't know, a lot of times, when you read the scriptures, especially Old Testament, you don't know all, and they were going into a land, like I said, that there was people there, they were going to be living with people there. God wanted to keep them pure.
Right.
And that's how come some of these things seem so silly, but they when we begin to, intermingle and then accept, it's just like used to, we here in the United States, we came together, okay? It was unity. Somebody was talking about diversity. No, it's not diversity that makes us great.
Right.
It's unity that makes, and we don't have any unity. People want to, we're not a melting pot anymore.
Right. Right. It's very difficult to get anybody to do anything without signing some agreement.
Yeah.
When you pull down an app from off the site, first thing you do, you have to scroll through all this stuff to say accept, because they don't want to get charged, they don't want to do all this stuff, and our society is too litigious, that's what they call it, too many legal lawyer types in there, and the handshake has gone away. And people, say, yeah, I'll put my word on it. You stand by that, I'll do it. And it just doesn't happen today, it seems like.
When I went down to Pastor Porter, I had this old pickup, and I had to work some, and my pickup blew up. So we called the local maker, his name was, I forgot, Phil Ryerson, I think his last name, but we called him Uncle Phil. And I bought, even when I came back, I bought an old $300 pickup, and they wanted me, the bank there that I'd been sending money into service and everything, they wanted my dad to sign for a $300 pickup, and I said, if he has to sign for $300, I'm not, if my credit's not Well, I go down there and see, Phil, and he said, well, I'll tell you what, you go buy your pickup, write a check for it, come in a couple of days, and we'll straighten it out. And I said, what?
Two different sizes, and, yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think this is the last one. The right to glean is given to travelers. When you come into your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes at your pleasure, but you shall not put any in your container. When you come into your neighbor's standing grain, you may pluck the heads with your hand, but you shall not use a sickle on your neighbor's standing grain. So it's like as you're traveling, if you're hungry, go ahead and, reach out and get whatever, pull a carrot out of the ground or whatever they do and eat it as you go. And what they're saying is you're not stealing from them. What's taken is so minuscule that you're gonna lose so much anyway. I know when we would, the one time I remember doing potatoes with Grandpa, he did things in a big way. He had 40 acres down on the bottom of, or maybe more than that, I don't know how much it was, but the 40 that we walked, potatoes, he dug them, just furrowed it over with his tractor, and we went down through there playing it, throw a potato down, stomp on it, and he'd come back and turn them over. And then time to come home, when it's time to get them up, he did the same thing, brought the tractor out, turned them over, and we picked them all out. Now, cutting down the road, you're gonna cut some potatoes, you're gonna leave some bad and stuff. And that's what's saying here, that there are people, you're gonna lose some of what you do. It's not gonna hurt you. It's not gonna harm you at all. And the people at this particular time, most of the time, they were traveling along roads, they didn't have a McDonald's, they didn't have, all these things. And sometimes it's further than they thought, they got sick or whatever, and they had to have something, a little bit to eat. Now, you can't go over to your neighbors and pick all their peaches off their tree and put them in your basket and take it home. But you can, and we had, back when we lived in Edmond, we lived in this house, and the guy behind us, he had a peach tree. And it was no big deal. But me and Darla, we saw them as pretty peaches and everything. We never did do anything, we just, and a few of them sometimes would drop off on our side, and we would, pick them up and take them and see if it was any good. Most times it wasn't, because they stayed there too long. Well, one time, this person, I know some of you know him, came over, and he was out in the backyard looking around. Oh, it looks all nice and everything. Oh, there's a peach tree. He just reached up and pulled one and picked it and started eating it. And the very next day, all the peaches was gone on that tree. The guy saw him evidently do that. They were gone, and the limb was cut off. It was on our side. And, I was like, okay, I can do that. I haven't done that. It was. And I'm like, whew, just made him an enemy, I know. Anyway, people are funny. Well, appreciate everybody coming out. We'll continue on next week. Now, we probably need to watch the weather pretty close.
Yeah.